So we're welcoming in David Walters as our presenter today. I had a chance to visit with David for a few minutes before you all came in, and while he's in Dallas, he's actually from East Texas. Um, and I won't do much more introduction than that, David. I'll let you take it from here. You're muted, David.
Thank you. And who's got the slides? Can I control the slides?
Yeah, Hannah, if you'll just let David be the sharer. How about now, David?
I do not see slides at the moment.
Is there a green share button?
There is a green share button. Oh, so Hannah, I sent them to Hannah. Do you want me to put my own slides up there? I can
Either
do
way.
that. All right, hold on. Let me just open them up. Sorry.
Good. All good.
Okay, let's try this again then. Zoom. Can we see the slides now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So, my name's Dave Walters. Also have the moniker of the Project Hand Grenade. I'm the CEO of Bottom Line Enhancement Services, and I've got 4 examples I want to try and get in today. So I'm going to speak pretty quickly. Hopefully we can get through them all. So I'd ask you to hold your questions to the end. But I do want to try and get through this as best we can. So first thing to point out, although we've got AI in the title, I'm not an AI person. I've been trying to help businesses implement AI, but actually, just so you can sort of picture where I sit, the first ever software patch I did was on a nuclear submarine, and it involved X-Acto tapes and Scotch tape to cut into the Mylar boot up tape. So my history goes back a pretty long way. So AI is not my core skill set, but I want to share some project management tools that I think would be useful to us. So how did I get here? Well, as I said, I started in the nuclear submarine service. I was on HMS Tireless at the height of the Cold War. I ran the weapons department, so I had the torpedoes, sonar, satcoms, radar, you name it, I had it. Later on, I cross-trained to diesel submarines. That's HMS Opportune, and we upgraded her for special operations. And I then, after 12 years in the Royal Navy, went to Canada and worked in their submarine service for about 5 years. After that, I left the Canadian Navy and went into nuclear emergency management in the Ontario power industry. And I became an emergency management consultant. Post 9/11, I took a left turn and ended up being the CEO of the only company in Canada licensed to provide armed security inside nuclear power plants. Again, not a core career path for an engineer. I returned to the UK and I actually got involved in PTSD for veterans and spent 3 years working with a charity trying to help veterans. Then after that, I went back into the corporate world. I needed somebody to give me some money because the government were refusing to fund us. So after 3 years, I couldn't be a one-man self-funded charity any longer. Went back to the corporate world. And then during that period, I requalified as a diver for, I think, the 3rd or 4th time. And so my main hobby now is shark diving whenever I get the chance. So how did we get here? Well, I realized that my passion is really helping small businesses. While I was in the corporate world, I got very frustrated that they would take the money offshore, they would maximize their profit and not do a lot for the community. So I really wanted to help local businesses and really get focused on that. Back in 2017, I lost my wife quite suddenly. I fell apart after that. And it took me about four years to get my head sorted out and get back in the game. And that was, of course, the time when COVID hit. So I needed to re-find my purpose. And a friend of mine had a program called the Core Purpose, which we did, and we identified that my core purpose is actually realizing divinity. Now, on the spiritual side, I'm an elder in the Apostolic Church, so I can address that purpose through that. But on the business side, I see the implementation of my core purpose as being helping small and medium-sized businesses become the absolute best version of themselves that they can be to provide the best value for the people that they serve. During COVID, I saw all the corporate BS that was going on and realized that I wasn't a corporate drone. That didn't fit for me. So I left, set up my own consultancy with the goal of bringing corporate level services to small and medium-sized businesses at a price they could afford. So I was doing that for 2 or 3 years. I then discovered that the programs I was offering, although very good programs, we were doing them with a done with you type format. So we'd have a 90-day sprint. We would work with the business owner, try and get them to do something. We weren't getting the results. About 80% of the time, my clients weren't getting the results I really wanted to get for them. And I realized the program wasn't working the way it should have done. So that's where we went to the next evolution, which was to create the NLBB, the No Load Business Booster. And the philosophy for that has come from the experience I've had in this project management world that I've been in for the last 40 odd years. So what we now do is we help the owners of small and medium-sized businesses save time, improve quality, and increase profit with no load on their team and guaranteed delivery. So my promise to everybody today is that I will deliver my secret for delivering projects on time within budget. I'll give you some ideas that I've been working with on how to implement AI without overburdening your budget and the challenges of managing AI projects. And for those that I can help, I've got a $32,000 special offer for people that stay to the end, which hopefully I'll be able to share with you. So the first case study, this was the first time I got involved with actually implementing an IT project. I'd already got the reputation as the project hand grenade. In the company I was with, they had spent 5 years trying to implement a company-wide field service report writing tool. After 5 years, they'd still got nothing delivered. Because of my reputation, I got parachuted in, and I met with a guy who'd been running it. He was a very smart German guy. He'd come through the ranks in this company. He had dotted every I, crossed every T. He was the perfect corporate project manager. Unfortunately, hadn't delivered anything. So I got involved with this. And then about 8 to 12 months later, we actually had an MVP that people were working with. And this then got us into the game and they developed from there. Because of my success with that project, I got invited to sit in on a meeting. The company was doing a major global IT upgrade. They had 3 major projects. One of them was a Salesforce derivative. Another one was a SAP derivative. And the third one was a project management tool that I was asked to look at. The project management tool was about to get shit canned. They'd been working at it for 18 months, got nowhere. When I sat in on the meeting, and this was in the UK, but we had people from all over the world, what I heard people in the corner saying the vendor for the software was from Israel. So when I heard people in the corner saying those effing Jews are going to screw this up for us, I knew it was not a good environment for me to be stepping into. However, we worked at it. It took me about 18 months to turn that project around, and I'll share how we did that. But this was a 42 million euro learning experience. The company fulfilled the statistics that 2 out of 3 IT projects failed to get delivered. Thankfully, mine was the one that got implemented, but it just goes to show you can spend a huge amount of money and still not get results. So what is my secret to delivering project management on time? I'll tell you, it's very simple. Just say no. Okay. When I went into the project, I had the nickname of the project hand grenade. By the time I got to the end of the project, my nickname had changed to that English arsehole that just says no, which I wore with pride. And the reason is because we actually said no to all the BS and the user misunderstanding and the user fear that stopped us getting the project delivered. So it wasn't just no. I'll qualify that a little bit. It was no, we're not making any changes. No, we're not going to do it your way. here's the product. This is what it's out the box. When you know how to use it, and when you can honestly tell me why it does not fit your use case, then we'll do customization and configuration. But until then, you're going to use it out the box. And so we had one mission with this project, and that was to promote user adoption. And if a work group got difficult, we wouldn't work with them. So, okay, we're not going to work with you. We'll come back to you at 18, 24 months. You'll be at the back of the queue. But we want people who will adopt this, who will get real experience, and then will help us upgrade and refine the product so that they use it. So saying no. So, I don't put it on my LinkedIn profile. The English arsehole that says no is probably not a good handle, but that was how I got this project delivered. Now, continuing from that project, as I say, this was a best in the world project management solution, and we were very close to snatching defeat from the jaws of victory as we went through this project. So the big lesson I took away, and this was a continuation, so we went into a global rollout. As I say, it's a world-class product. It should have been so easy, but we really did manage to screw up the preparation and the implementation. And so the lessons I took away from that one, again, is prioritize the MVP, get the adoption, get them using it. We spoke in our networking session, in our network group, the difficulty of getting users to do what you think should be really simple. Keep it simple, keep it stupid, get them using it. Even if you only give them 2 buttons, if they have the option of pressing button A or button B, when they're comfortable with that, you can then open up the other functionality, and then they'll grow with you. But if you try and give them too much in the get-go, you will lose the users. And when you lose the users, you lose the project, because they won't adopt it, or they'll want you to change the way that we've always done it, which defeats the whole purpose of your project. So this gave me the philosophy that I now use with what I call the no-load business booster. So I have a philosophy: before I offer anything to a client, I want to do everything I can possibly do to remove all the barriers to entry. So some of the products, or most of the products that we offer, there are no upfront costs to the product. There is no pre-engineering cost. There is no load on the in-house IT team for implementation. And what we do is we offer them a done-for-you implementation with lifetime support. Now, what that does is it takes away all the resistance for the user to engage with you, for the user to engage with what you're doing. But because you've done all this, you're doing this work at your own cost. So what you have to do is make the product very, very sticky on the back end. So then when you get to the sticky part, that's when you back end load your cost structure, but they're already tied in. And once they've implemented, they're not going anywhere. So this is what I do with all my products now, and it's what I recommend. If you want to get something to market, do everything you can to take out the barriers to entry, make it a sticky product, and then back-end load the program. Okay, the third example, this is a small gas turbine. I took over a department in this company. I don't know how many of you heard of the NPS, the Net Promoter Score. It's a very, very good metric for measuring customer satisfaction. A best-in-class company like Apple will have an NPS of 70, 75. The department I took over had an NPS of -15. So you can understand that we were not the most popular kids on the block. When I tried to resolve this, I got all these stories. The new unit guys said they couldn't sell new units because we didn't do in-country overhauls of the core engine. The factory in Europe said, well, we've changed our service philosophy. We're no longer doing in-country overhauls. We now do core engine exchanges. So all that work you did to build a workshop, throw it away. You need to buy a core engine. Then when we went to the clients, we said, okay, we've got a core engine. They said, we don't care. The core engine is not what's killing us. If you've never worked in the gas turbine field, a gas turbine at base load with 95% availability is a pretty challenging feat of engineering. And just to put this in perspective, if you imagine getting into your car at 1 second after midnight on New Year's Eve, putting your foot hard on the gas and leaving your foot on the gas, the first time you can take your foot off the gas is the 16th of December. That's what gives you 95% availability on a baseload unit. No maintenance, no downtime, no nothing. You just sit there with full gas. And the issue that the customers were having wasn't the core engines were cratering. That happened occasionally, but all the package parts were failing. So when you have a solenoid or a filter or a fuel drain that seizes or doesn't operate correctly, the package shuts down. You've then got to get the maintenance out. And in the maintenance, for me to meet my contract of 95% availability, I had a total of 10 days downtime over the whole year. So what we did, we worked out that we had to ask the right question, then we could get the answer. And we actually got the NPS to +10 by going through this process. So how does that relate to AI? Well, the Shoggoth is what the AI guys use as the meme for their product. It comes from, I think, a 1980s or a 1990s sci-fi thing. The Shoggoth is a malevolent monster that is able to grow eyes and tentacles at will, and people can't control it. So why do I say this? Well, SMBs must adopt AI. If they don't, they're going to get left behind and they're going to fail. The problem is there is not a really viable, easy to use AI model that suits the real world applications. Now, I use AI all the time for content, for marketing, but it's crossing the A to D barrier. That's where the problems occur. So if the business hasn't already done digitization, there's very little point trying to give them AI because they've got nothing to work with. If they've already done AI, then don't offer to digitize for them. Let's get the AI working. So the approach I take is the questions I ask with a client, if we're looking at some sort of AI or some sort of BPA, can the AI add immediate value based on your current process? If it can't, then I'll recommend doing a BPA, business process automation, because then we start to digitize the way they work. Once they've done the BPA, then we can add the AI back in to give them the benefits of AI. And if they haven't done, and if they have done the AI and they've got that working, then we can go in as a second wave and do BPA and actually, expand the physical reach of their system so the AI's got more to work with. But at least they've got something right from day one and they're getting some benefit. So that's the three examples. Now, I'm on time, so I'm not going to do the fourth example, but I just want to make you this often that I spoke about this in the networking. One of the BPAs that we've created is a link to the IRS, which allows self-employed people who were impacted by COVID to directly claim a tax credit. And the tax credit could be worth up to $32,000. So it's a very simple portal. The portal goes live next week. So if anybody was self-employed in 2020 or 2021 and was impacted by COVID, or were looking after dependents who were impacted by COVID, there's potentially $32,000 of tax credit that you can claim as soon as next week, next Wednesday. And part of what we're doing through the portal is to advance the money as soon as the IRS approves it, to advance the money to you so you don't have to wait 6 months for a check. So that's everything I had. I know I've gone over time and I apologize for that. This is my backup story. I know I'm out of time, so I'll leave it there. But if people want to talk about submarine warfare, I'm here to do that as well. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, David. I would like to hear about it another time. Back to when you were talking about delivering, minimum viable. Can you talk more about how you actually arrive at what is minimum viable?
Sure. So with what we were looking at, so this was a global project management rollout. We had one of the work groups, which actually the aero gas turbine business unit, wanted to go full in on this product because they wanted to use it to manage all of their corporate risk management portfolio. The other work groups wanted to change it to the way they'd been doing business for the last 20 or 30 years. So what we said is, okay, and the reason the project was in a mess was simply the fact that they tried to accommodate everybody and please nobody. So we said, okay, we had a champion, which was the aero group. We said, okay, what is the minimum functionality that will be acceptable to you to allow us to roll this out? And it was basically project management, portfolio management, and then the risk management module. So we said, okay, for the rest of the business units, all we will do is the core project management tool and the portfolio management. That was all we offered them. And then we went around all the business units and said, this is what we're offering you. If you want it, we can put you in the plan to get it. And if you don't want it, if you want to be difficult, you go to the back of the queue and we'll get to you in 2 years. It's your choice. So this is where I got my other nickname, the Englishman who always says no. But that was how we did it. We just we passed it down to the absolute minimum that was acceptable to our champion user group, and then used that as the point of entry for the rest of the business units.
Great. Okay. Questions from the group? Got a few minutes with David here.
Stunned silence.
I'm very comfortable with the awkward silence for a minute. Sometimes people have to think through these, you know. You've only had 38 minutes to be thinking. David, we've
Hey,
had
David.
oh
The
go
biggest
for it.
mistakes.
Yeah, so you described the process how you helped company to save money, right? So you did the kind of work with Salesforce, right? So as I understand, right, so you suggest like to use Salesforce as it's organically developed, right, without any kind of the customization, and then already implement some changes based on the needs that they are missing. Is that correct?
Correct. If you can get your users to adopt the vanilla product, and I mean Salesforce is a Shoggoth in its own right. It's huge.
Yeah.
And Salesforce was actually promoted as one of the competitors to our product. And we had to do a big review and said, okay, Salesforce is not a project management tool and a risk management tool, but the Salesforce salesmen were very good saying, hey, we can build anything you want. Just tell us. So, that was another one of those wrinkles we had to work through. But what I would suggest with Salesforce, especially if you have, and we spoke about this, if you have users who are not tech savvy, and there are many more of those out there than we would think, if you have users who are not comfortable in doing the techie stuff that we say, okay, yeah, we can do this, that's not a problem, give them the most vanilla, the simplest functionality that gives them an immediate win. Okay. And pare down the offering to the absolute minimum so you can implement it. They're comfortable with it. They get the benefit from it. And once they've had a win, then the user resistance goes away. Then you can say, okay, hey, this is working. How's it working? Oh, it's great. Well, what's the next problem you've got? Oh, can we do this? Yeah, we've got a module that can do that. Let's open up this module. So win the user first, because human nature being what it is, if you try and give them too much all at once, we always default to the way we've always done business. And so if you're trying to get people to change, the more change you ask of them, the more likely they are to retreat to the way they've always done business, which then kills your project because you're trying to change the business culture, you're trying to change their work processes, and ultimately you're trying to change the whole business results, the way of working. So if you give them too much at once, they'll just retreat to, well, we've always done it this way, and your project will be a nightmare to implement.
Yeah, 100% agreed. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes, like the startups are actually killed with huge amount of the ideas, but not by the lack of the ideas. And I believe it describes the situation.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, when we said no to everybody, and we got one group who said we can live with this very thin piece of capability, then we can implement. We got the MVP, we got the user adoption, then we expanded sort of laterally by adding more functionality, and vertically by bringing in additional user groups into the core program. And that's what then drove the philosophy for what I now offer, which is I want user adoption at all cost. I'll give you the functionality once I've got you comfortable with the product.
Thanks.
Okay.
Was there another question that came up? David, we've had a couple of presenters talk before about you mentioned, going to the digitization before the automation. Can you give a few more practical tips on going to digitization, that first piece?
Sure. So, I mean, one of the AI projects we looked at, one of my clients runs a virtual employee company, and they They provide very, very high quality VEs from the Philippines who work US hours. And what they wanted was the ability to check the sentiment in the close of business reports that come from their staff. And they're now up to almost 1,000 people. So it was getting beyond the capability of the management team to read, 1,000 emails every night. So they said that AI must be able to do this. So we started by looking at a BPA that would say, okay, let's monitor when the emails come in. Let's make sure that they're actually, one of the red flags is the VE stop sending in the close of business reports. That shows they're sort of getting disgruntled. The other red flag is the language in the report starts to show frustration either with the client or from the client. So the first thing we want to do is just to make sure we were getting compliance with delivery. And then the second thing was to actually use the AI for sentiment. So we looked at a BPA to just do the deliverability analysis. And we got down that, we got the user stories built. And then we realized actually we already had it in a digital form because it was email. All we had to do was get the email in the right format so we could just drop the AI on top to give us that sentiment analysis. So we as I say, we tried to do a digitization that wasn't necessary because it was already in digital format. What I see, and again, this is, I think, a mistake that most of us make if we're in the tech space. We assume that our clients are tech savvy, and they're not. Many, many more small and medium-sized companies are tech illiterate. And I'll give you another story. I worked with a company, a $50 million company. I was offering them business process automation. And the guy I was talking to said, yeah, we're probably not ready for that. And I said, well, it will save you time. It will improve your profits. It will improve your quality. And he said, yeah, but we don't even have logins on our desktops. Now, this was in 2024, a $50 million company. So if anybody is a prime target to be hacked and to be ransomware, that's got to be, hey, come and take down my company. I mean, that's the level of tech incompetence, especially when we look at the cyber threat. That is the reality that many small and medium-sized companies are working with. And when we come in as techies and say, hey, we can do this, that, and the other, and we can automate, we can digitize, and we can do everything, it's the and we overestimate our clients in most cases. And I think that's where we've got to step back. How do I make my clients successful? By not giving them all the bells and whistles. Just give them something that really works for them. So they're going to adopt it. Then I can help them get better once they're comfortable with the platform.
Pretty amazing that I think, and this is maybe what Bodan was saying, like we as techies completely, like, we're miles ahead of where the potential customer or user actually needs us to be on day one.
Yep.
Wow. That's great. Thanks, David. Thanks everyone for coming in today. Hopefully you learned something. You can connect with David on LinkedIn. This has been great. We'll see you all next week, same time here at the Midday Connect.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.